Hi, and welcome to another edition of Covid19 Diaries. I am your host, Senyejom Awushi Adadavo, Chief Photographer, CEO, Images Image. Our guest tonight is a fine, distinguished Ghanaian journalist at the UN. Hello, sir. Would you introduce yourself to us?
Hello, Senyejom. My name is Ben Dotse Malo, and I work at UN headquarters here in New York.
Uncle Ben, it's my pleasure to have you, but I hear that times are not good in New York. Would you confirm that?
Yes, you've probably followed the news either on CNN, BBC, or some other media outlets. Mm-hmm. It has been very tough over here in New York. New York has been described as the epicenter of the Covid-19 pandemic in the US. There was a day, a week or two ago that the Covid-19 deaths here were probably more than 700. That figure, that number has come down. The last time I checked, it was going down from 500 plus to about 300 plus. But honestly, every number you hear is a human being, is someone's father or mother, someone's relative. So it has been serious, but we are hoping that this is the plateau has been reached and that the numbers would continue to go down.
Good. So are you still in lockdown? Is New York still in confinement? Are you all locked down?
Yeah. We are all in lockdown unless you are essential staff, unless you have something important to do, unless you are a first responder, unless you are working maybe somewhere along the food chain, you are delivering food, or you are working in a system where you need to provide food, unless you are one of the Ghanaian medical doctors or nurses or healthcare workers like many of the people in my church. So New York is still in lockdown.
Okay. So do you go to work? How has the structures of the UN been functioning? Do you go to work? Do you go to the office?
No, we don't go to the office, but we are working probably even harder than when we were physically going to the office. As I talk to you, my laptop is right here in front of me. When we finish talking now, I'll get back on the laptop, check my emails, respond to every urgent request. If you go online, you will be able to access all the work that we do every day. I work in news and communication, so every day in 9 different languages of the world, my section is produce stories, amplifying stories from the World Health Organization, amplifying stories from the UN Secretary General, stressing the things that need to be done for all of us to defeat this disease. So every day by 8 in the morning, you are checking online, and we have conference calls using Teams, which is a Microsoft facility. Sometimes you are communicating with others through WhatsApp. You are making phone calls, and you are producing material and posting them online at news.un.org, where people can find authentic reports and news about what needs to be done and done right for all of us to defeat this disease.
Uncle Ben, the urgency in your voice is very admirable. For many thought, the UN is only heard of when there's war. So tell us exactly what role the UN plays, since this, we all know it's a pandemic. Yes, it's a disease, but so how does the UN come in?
Yes, the UN is there to deal with issues of peace and security where there is war. As I speak to you, there are thousands of UN peacekeepers in Mali, for example. You have thousands of UN peacekeepers in the Central African Republic. Even in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, you still have lots of UN staff helping the governments there to deal with protracted conflict and issues. Beyond Africa, you can go to Yemen, the UN is engaged there. Syria, the UN is engaged. What many people may not know, Senor John, is that the World Health Organization is fundamentally a part of the United Nations system.
Okay.
If you hear about UNICEF helping anywhere to address COVID issues, that is the United Nations. When you hear about the World Food Program, when you hear about the UN Population Fund or UN Women, all these, or UNDP, all these are separate arms of the UN helping to address this issue. So the Secretary General has put his weight and the weight of the entire UN family behind WHO. The Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, has been stressing that we need solidarity now. And so that is why when there is any talk of funding for WHO being affected, it is going to affect all of us. So there is the need for global solidarity. And many world leaders, including Secretary General Antonio Guterres, have been stressing that even if you eliminate COVID-19 in the developed world, but it remains in a corner of the world somewhere, then we are all not free. That is why everything must be done. If you get a vaccine, it must reach every corner of the world. It must be accessible, it must be affordable, and it must get to everybody. If you get medication that is solving the problem, that has to be shared. It cannot be kept with one nation. So yes, the UN does peace and security, peacekeeping, but the UN is involved in addressing disasters, addressing conflicts, whether in Syria, whether in the Middle East, whether in Yemen. When the tsunami hit several years ago, yes, the UN coordinated the world so that help could be given. So the UN does many things in many ways, and that is the role of the organization.
So in other words, this COVID-19 is seen as a global war then by the UN, right?
Yes, it's seen. The Secretary General has stated that this is the most challenging crisis the world has faced since Second World War and since the inception of the establishment of the United Nations. So in a way, it's a global war. The effect is still unraveling. The effect is still being felt. The effect on lives. The Secretary General is warning about the economic impact. He's also warning about how this affects families. For example, he has spoken against domestic violence because reports are emerging that many women and children are receiving or are the receiving end of a lot of domestic violence. The numbers have gone, in some cases, 300%.
Within this
when
period,
people are calling.
is it within this
Sorry?
period? Is this statistics you're giving us within the pandemic period?
Yes, especially during this lockdown.
Okay.
The numbers have gone up. If you have a call center in the US or in the UK, suddenly you are hearing that the calls are being made about 300%.
Whoa.
So you are finding out that there are many women who are usually the ones at the receiving end, and it's called for attention to be paid to that. So women and children in particular are not abused by usually violent men.
Very good, very good. So, Uncle Ben, please give us a rundown of how your typical Monday to Friday is like from home.
So we are working from home. As a chief editor, my job doesn't even stop on Saturdays or Sundays. If an important story comes out, something significant comes out, we have to put it out. So you also serve to coordinate over the weekend. A typical day, let's say today, for example, by 7:30, you are checking emails that are coming through so that we can address and deal with stories that are coming up. And then about 9 o'clock, we have our first editorial meeting to look at the most important things that are on the agenda for the day. Sometimes it could be a press conference by WHO, by Dr. Tedros and his team. So we will be preparing to amplify that and get that story out. Maybe they've come up with a directive that would be good. For example, we are looking at UNESCO, which is another arm of the UN today, and they've come out with figures and some guidelines as to how schools should be reopened in an orderly way. So we will amplify that. And then other issues, we will look at the top stories of universal value. Yesterday, I think the UN Population Fund, UNFPA, was trying to raise the alarm that there will be millions of unplanned pregnancies as a result of the COVID-19 lockdown. And so provision has to be made for those things.
Very good, very good. So basically, your day is even more busier. Just that you've dropped your suits and for a cap and a sweatshirt, looking younger and
See,
funkier.
oh, thank you. If I should take my cap off, you will see that we are not so young after all. So,
But it's
because you are home, there's no need to have the suit and tie, which are the uniforms for our physical presence at UN headquarters. But everything is being reviewed as we go. The more we stay at home, the better the fight gets against COVID-19. And the way to put it is, if you are not getting out, then the virus is also not traveling. So particularly for the sake of our medical staff, and there are many Ghanaians I know who are working in the healthcare field here in New York.
Exactly.
Some of them, if they get the chance to talk to you, you could see they are dealing with things that they need relief from. Some of the situations they are confronting are not easy. So we need to stay home in order to help them overcome this.
On that point, what is the UN stand on Ghana being out of having lifted the our lockdown? What is the US? Did it get to the US that Ghana had to go off the lockdown, and how did the UN take it?
Let me be specific. I cannot speak for the UN. I'm talking to you in a personal capacity, number one. The UN doesn't try to interfere in the sovereign affairs of any member state. So if Ghana makes a decision, the UN is not going to come out and say, Ghana, you are doing this. The one thing, though, I can tell you this week, that the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Dr. Michelle Bachelet, stated is the fact that it has come to the attention of the Human Rights Commissioner that some countries are using the lockdown restrictions to actually suppress other rights of the population. And she was cautioning against that the rights of the citizens should not be abused. But the fact is, the UN cannot interfere in the domestic sovereign affairs of any member state. So whatever Ghana chooses to do, the government chooses to do, the UN representative in Ghana can offer their advice. The WHO country representative will offer their views. It is up to the government and the leadership of Ghana to take this recommendation. But what I can tell you again, over here in New York, what Governor Cuomo is doing and doing effectively is to allow the science to lead the way, to allow facts, to allow figures to determine what the next steps are. And it seems you cannot go wrong when you are led by the science, because that is proving very effective so far. And so the three areas the UN is considering now for global consideration is to have the science leading the way, is to have the solutions shared, and then to have solidarity. If you have all these things, then we can defeat this virus faster together.
Great. It's been very insightful talking to you, Uncle Ben. I call him Uncle because that's how I see him. He's my big uncle. Uncle Ben, so let's get down, let's get down home a bit. what message you have for us, and I want a sweet one in Ewe. By the way, I've been following your social media posts in Ewe, and it's very insightful. So give us a very short one to take along. Something short and sweet in Ewe, and eloquent as you are always.
Okay. Semi jump at a doya yima any door the bara the vodia de alaba alaba mashamana jababa ato da pema na tenwa no pema alone me subora pema medeka ko na no godom na mai na ngududu jiga ado na chika plega alo chi no kogevia ma na yi na ma yi bo alaba shipklo plajale lechi yi kamanya chifafeo echia na chio da ni ba manya ono gba ma mare na gazan dole la ba chi afima asia ha na klog alaba na klog chenye abale doctor ko na shile theater na klog chenye plajale no nya ba mate afama no go don na here ka eleve vie me bona makona na mafia what you need me na yaga ajibe mafia on your mask. You have to Lebanon a mask. Nyama la fia mask ali. Ta Lebanon ji mask kenaza. Lebanon dogwa. Na dolela maga cho mara dogbo ado acho bo ado marebo. Ta mask zaza levavie fianto. Me de kuku abadudu apo ko plan mo ado kutre pa yi plato. Me de kuku mi do shi
to kata no stop. Aglo tutu
aglo tutu mereko wo na level bemebe no bemi wea enyo awu eku tap ni no bebo no nye be mawe di jinwa veton alona ye yika dole la nwu va ye a nu shanu ye hi akami atan fifi la afia mi kata mi jababa mi ala bena mi aloki enu de ka mamleto maglo sanyu ejom mi bebomba mo na no pema manya ma sha me ke pema no go ne no via doli no ma dogo ba be o capital do alo wo big la do e gare kama va va go ko plan dudu na wo vio ta enya ima na ma shama la kuku de de vie to mi ama yo ba mi khose de yesu ngo alo mi khose le ma wo ma ko nya be no nya be ndali e na nya be e khore le ye bo apare le ye bo amon fu pam la fama jababa na ple gali aro molu ako ana ben no ho ate na ma wo po bugo akwe de ho mu no ko akọpọ de vio oje na manyo edo na nye ba wo na lesesi gaka amaye le bon aro amaye onye
novi
ne pepo prio de ewo kla amaye onye neighbor aro nye pepo ye le tore kama na wo to onye wo to gba ebona bo doga ta ni ma de kupuna mo ko nye be menya ma she ko balo ta me yo ke no amelo shi nyama be na be fle molu na molu fle go ka fle gali ma ali ma khoshi aba molu gali a de view attend du ya chi agbe ta ni jababa ne do shi de mi ani obom ya pere mi ani onwu alaba be na do va yi vore amona global so vie yo chi adjoma kle gaka na ya ye pere yo onwu wonye nya wo glo wonye ma wo nya wo glo manya dokito jiji abela ye toko na nyo ya chagbe kwa mam ya kwa ga yidan go tami wonwe mi awo kala don na mi adu afaji la Covid19 na ngusia
yo miato miasi miafo global dolalea junior japa. So what Uncle Bess said in summary is that this is a global war. This is a war that is being fought. Let's all come together and fight it, and if we can, we should stay at home. Uncle Ben, we are most grateful. Thank you so much. And this is a diary, so we could always call on you again. We're so grateful
that you took time off to talk to us. Take care and stay at home and be safe.
Thank you.
God bless.
Bless you too. Bye.